Right. I'm streaming now. Let's just wait, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes.
Mhm.
Verify if people starts joining. And else, if they don't join, I think it's going to be recorded there to anyone
Yeah,
that wants to take a look at it a little later.
good
And
stuff.
okay, so I guess I will start right now. So just with a little introduction, like I did with you. So hi everyone, anyone that is looking at this into my Facebook account, or I don't know later somewhere else, but right now it's just my Facebook account. So this is or the idea behind this live stream is to encourage my IT contacts or anyone that is looking at this to advance into their IT careers, or what who knows, jump in into IT careers. So, and a little background about why I'm doing this is because I attended a little training during this quarantine from the office, and they challenge us to do something, right? To do not wait more time. Just go ahead and just do it, right? Like the meme from Sacha Labov, the actor
Just
from
do it.
exactly
Yep.
from Transformers, right?
Yep.
So I will try to make this a little series of interviews with more friends that I have in the IT community. We have here Craig, which is an information security engineer, but
Hey.
maybe we will invite a system administrator, another network engineer, and who knows who else? Maybe an operation manager or I don't know, change management or something like that. Um, And yeah, and as a fun fact, we have been planning this. Hey, hi. So we have been planning this for quite a while, right? Like a couple of months or weeks. And well, we have here Craig, or my friend from LinkedIn. So well, another fun fact: today is Father's Day in my country. So now that I see your your
Mhm.
your son there, or yeah,
Yep.
um, congratulations on the Father's
Oh,
Day
thanks.
here in my country.
Yep. Appreciate
Is
it.
so well, let's talk a little bit. Let's get into details. So my first question
Yep.
is, uh, what's an information security engineer like? What do you do on a daily basis?
Yep. So, great question. One of the first things to realize about that, I think, is that it's different everywhere you go. There are information security engineers, and then there's infosec analysts, and basically they swap their job functions depending on where you go. So some places they call security engineer um, role, and it's actually the same thing as a security analyst at most other places. And then there are places you go where they have what I would consider more of the true traditional security engineer role, that is the engineer portion where they actually develop security tools, or they develop different other kinds of related tooling for your company. So those are your folks that are that know how to code, not necessarily like they're not software engineers, but they can hack things together with code to make it work. Um, and for example, I at one point wrote a Chrome extension to basically warn people in the company I was working at the time that they should not be uploading sensitive files to SaaS sites like Box.com and such,
Okay.
and Dropbox. So every time they would go to a site like that, it would check the URL and notice, say, hey, this might be against company policy, that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, stuff like that. That's what I would normally call system engineer, but or a security engineer. But like I said, it just depends on where you are. Security analysts are, I would say, the majority of your junior and intermediate level security roles. Excuse me.
Problem.
And what that really consists of is not so much the tooling side, but it's pretty much analyzing the events that you receive from logs and from any different other sources that you bring into your security dashboard, which is usually part of a tool called the SIEM, SIEM, the Security Information Event Management. Um, basically what that tool does in a nutshell is it will you set up your different devices, different products and consoles to send their logs to it, and it will catalog them, index them to make them easily searchable, and
Okay.
it'll basically try to highlight important events that are being seen from those logs, and it will most importantly analyze them and change them from just simple events that are coming in into alerts that you can have the opportunity to review, investigate, and take action if necessary. Um, a good example of that might be, let's say I'm looking at my sim. There's multiple different kinds, but one that I'm familiar with is in particular is Alien Vault Sim. So let's say I'm feeding AWS logs and Sophos web gateway logs and Forcepoint logs into that particular SIM environment, into that security management feed. And it will say, okay, so I've got this event, I've got that event, I've got this event. So we're going to catalog those things, show you where each of these things are coming from. Here's the source IP address. Where are they going? Here's the destination IP address. Look at the contents of these packets or these log lines and say, all right, this looks like a Trojan activity, for example, it might
Oh,
say,
okay.
because it sees maybe packets going to and from known Trojan related sites, or maybe known malware CNC sites, which is a CNC C2 command and control, which is basically what malware authors, malware campaign runners will use to, once they have systems infected, to issue orders to those infected systems. And they will essentially call out to the internet to whatever server, whatever IP they're coded to. So that is something that your SIM might look at these packets or look at these log lines and say, hey, I recognize that IP, I recognize that IP. This might be Trojan activity or this might be malware activity, and you should check it out. So when you go to your alerts dashboard, now it's your job as a security analyst to say, all right, so this is what the system thinks it is. I'm going to figure out why it thinks that, whether it really is what's going on, and if I see any evidence to support what I think is really going on. So you'll kind of go between those three basic stages: your initial receipt of an alarm and inspection of it, understanding what it is that it's trying to say is happening. Second stage, seeing if you can verify that with a huge variety of different sources, not just the stuff that's coming into that event management system, but things all over the internet, what they call a OSINT, which is a open source intelligence.
Okay.
And basically all the different information sources you can get your hands on, you'll check for things that seem to relate to that. And once you've done that, you move into your final phase where you're ready to actually issue a disposition about it. Like, what is it that I am concluding was happening here? And most of the time, honestly, it's a lot of nothing. It's false positives.
Okay.
It's yeah, it's very difficult to have a low false positive rate right out of the box with any security product, because if you have something that's too sensitive, then it gives you a lot of false positives, of course. But if you have something that's not sensitive enough, then you might have a situation where, yes, there are a lot of alerts.
It was
There's
real.
definitely, yeah, exactly. Yeah, like there's a lot of real stuff here, but there's probably some stuff that we should have seen that we're not seeing because it's too difficult for it to differentiate between whether it's a false positive or not. So, yeah, so they basically always tend to skew on the side of false positives. So from there, your task is to, if you have a system that allows you to tune out those false positives, um, by basically figuring out patterns in your traffic, patterns in your events and your alarms, to where you can get to the point that you say, okay, in our environment, I see this every other week. I see this every day. I see this every 3 hours, that sort of thing. And because you can look at the history of the events and the alarms that are going on. And so if I'm able to do that, then I can say, I have no reason to see this activity. So I'm going to click here and tune it out,
Yeah.
and I won't do that anymore. Then the next month, you do the same thing again. And hey, I'm going to remove this, this, and this, and we don't need those. And the more often you do that, the more you customize it for your environment, the more you'll start to see the stuff that's really necessary bubble up to the surface. And that's what you really want. The more you do that, the more effective your security monitoring tool is. Um, and that's even when you're not using like a full SIM, even if you're just using a firewall
Yeah.
um, dashboard, like whether it's a Sophos or ForcePoint or Cisco, whatever firewall you're using. um, as you can learn to do that, you make it far more effective to focus on filter down. You're a network engineer, so I'm sure you're well
Hmm.
aware of that. You
Yeah.
filter down to see what you actually want.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yep. So basically, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that my next question was related a little
Mhm,
bit to firewalls because I know a company that the firewalls, infrastructure, and all that are managed by the security team specifically.
mhm,
So the network engineer, they might make the connections and all that, but the policies and the permissions and all that in the firewall specifically are managed by the security team. Example.
yeah.
So, so with that being said, what background do you have, or what background do you think is needed for a security engineer? Like, for example, do you need to go to service desk or IT or a little bit of networking, or do you think that
Mhm.
someone brand new can jump in right away just to information security?
So I would say background wise, first off, definitely makes sense that they do have security team manage firewalls, or at least look through firewalls. I don't know if I would say I think the security team needs to manage them all the time. I think a lot of times that's a good task for network engineers to handle. But of course, at a lot of places, the network engineers are so overloaded they might just not have the processing time to
Yeah.
be able to do that. So I get it. Between the two, either way, those are both two different staffs that are good choices for managing that. Maybe some places it's a little bit broken up from what I've seen, where they have the security team manage the ACLs for firewalls, um, the rules for blocking certain things, and but for the most part, the networking team manages them to make sure that the traffic is flowing the way it should, because they're going to have to receive requests from the other departments to say, hey, we need you to punch a hole in the firewall to let this through, that sort of thing. But um, yeah, so for base foundation stuff for getting into security. Oh, also, by the way, it's with security engineers, um, they always include that first part that I was talking about, the analysis part. That's the one thing in common to all security engineers. It's just that certain other places they have a little bit extra on it, the actual tool development engineering portion.
Okay.
But basically, if you want to get into security, very first thing I would say is yes, definitely a strong IT background. You need to understand the way the operating systems work. I mean, you don't have to understand it in so much detail that you can tell Bill Gates, "Hey, you did that wrong." But you know, you need to have a pretty good idea of the way things usually work. You need to know about why and where logs get stored in certain operating systems. Um, you don't have to have locations memorized necessarily, but you need to be able to find stuff when you need to. Um, you need to know things like what are services, what do they do on the system, how do you find out when they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or when they are doing things they're not supposed to do, how to find network connections that are currently existing on a system. All that sort of stuff requires a good familiarity with operating systems already, just right out of the box. Besides that, like I say, you don't need to be an expert, but I would say you need to be a definitely a power user for of operating systems. So that being said, a background of IT support, excellent.
Okay.
Background of let's say a web server support. I used to do that. Linux web server. I did the IT and the Linux web server thing at a couple different places, and so those are great backgrounds getting prepared for security. What I would recommend, and I've seen this said over and over again, is when you think you're in an IT job that's not security, chances are you're wrong. Like any given IT job is probably going to be security related somewhere. Like you
Yeah.
said, being a networking, definitely you're going to see security stuff. And it's a great opportunity for you. If you're interested in security, you can focus on those things, and you can just kind of like draw that stuff into you and say, like the Linux role I was at, I would look for tickets that seem to be related to security things. There were certain things that kind of happen all the time, like malware infection and stuff, that are
Exactly.
kind of a pain to deal with, but so nobody wants to take them. But I would grab those and say, okay, let's see what this is. Let me see what the situation is. If it's something I've seen before, if it's something new. And I learned so much about web-based security from doing that server admin role and being a Linux support server admin. And I would say also, excuse me, your your basic security principles. That is what you'll mostly learn when you're an IT help desk analyst, when you're a tech support, which at all levels, those are the kinds of things that you can learn there. It's
Yeah.
just about keeping your eyes open for them. You're going to be asked to manage passwords. You're going to have to be asked to reset passwords. If you have smart cards, if you have certain other security tokens for two-factor and such, um, expect to handle those identity and access management or IAM controls. Um, and that's all definitely basic and intermediate stuff for security. Like you can't, it's pretty much the foundations of all security stuff that you're going to see there. So um, there's no scenario in which you go into security and think, oh, I didn't need to know any of that stuff. Working
So,
as IT tech.
so what you're saying is that a little bit of everything it's perfect. A
Mhm.
little bit of
Yep.
networking, a little bit of, in this case, system administration for the
Yep.
OSs,
Hmm.
and even nowadays a little bit of cloud, right? Because of
Oh
a lot
yeah.
of cloud services where you are at
Yeah.
risk, right, with phishing
Yep.
and malware and all that. So
Hmm.
yeah, definitely.
Definitely. And when it comes to that, you definitely don't need to be a cloud expert, but you should be familiar with these concepts, right? The addition to that base knowledge with the IT support knowledge and the cloud thing that I would say is you also want security plus level, CompTIA security plus level knowledge. That's your foundational principle stuff for security.
And we
So,
will get to
um,
certifications in a while, and I have a specific
mhm.
question about
Yep,
that.
yep.
But yeah,
And I just want to say I don't mean you have to get the cert. You definitely don't have to do that necessarily, but to have that level of knowledge, yeah, that's
yeah.
what's important.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you can have a bunch of certifications, but if you don't know how to
Hmm.
apply them, or if you don't have real experience in the field, it's just
Yeah,
like something that is hanging off the wall, right? It's not
yep,
useful.
yep.
So, and what
You go.
brought you into information security? It was like something that you planned, or it was out of the sudden that you ended in a information security role?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I saw the movie Hackers,
Oh, okay.
and I decided that I definitely want to do that stuff. And then I grew up, got a little bit older, and saw, oh, it doesn't work like that at all. But security is still pretty cool. I still want to do something sort of kind of like that. So, yeah. So then I found out the real world about security. I'm like, yeah, that's still pretty cool. It's still pretty interesting. I want to defend systems and users. So pretty cool stuff. Basically, because I'd always been interested in computer stuff, from a very early age when I was a kid. I got into, when the internet was getting big. I finally
Yeah.
started late 90s. I'm 33, so late 90s, I started to play around with AOL and chats and websites and all that other stuff online. And so I was already super, super excited into that stuff, really nerdy. And freaking later on, as time went, I started looking at the professional side of computers and seeing the different areas there were. I thought I wanted to be a computer programmer at first and for a few years. And I was like, yeah, I definitely don't want to do that. Um, that's just not the stuff that I'm interested in most. Um, then I looked at what security personnel do, and I saw, oh yeah, that seems like fun stuff that I would enjoy doing. I'm a very analytical person, so the analysis part I think is probably what draws me to it the most, and that plus being able to stop the bad guys that have this specialized knowledge from preying upon all the regular people just trying to use their computers, just trying to go to work, just trying to live, that don't
Hmm.
have the specialized knowledge to keep themselves safe from it. So, um, yeah, I'd say that's basically all of my motivations right there.
Okay,
So,
great.
oh, sorry, I think you also wanted to know, like, professionally, how I got onto this track.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, that's a seems to always be a really common thing for people in security. I used to wonder the same thing for so long, all the time when I was trying to get into security.
Uh-huh.
Um, basically, I started out. I finished my associates with in information security and assurance, and I had a lot of networking from that. I got my CCNA routing and switching,
Okay.
and then went to go work in a NOC, a wireless internet service provider NOC,
Yeah.
and then a network operating center. And then I went to go work in a microwave radio NOC, And there, of course, I had lots of hands-on stuff with the networking aspect, and of course, can't do networking without running into security. So yeah, so I basically just keyed in on the security stuff that I saw there. Not to mention, like all the time on my own, I was always reading articles about security related stuff because I didn't know how I was going to get into it, but I knew that I wanted to be good at it, and I knew that I wanted to get there one day. So I was just the best thing I could think of to do was read everything I could get my hands on with security wise. And people would tell me, or people would say just generally, um, the best security people are those who constantly keep up with what's going on
Yeah,
and in
definitely.
the field. As same thing with doctors, I think. So that's what I was trying to do, make sure that I'm paying attention to what's going on, reading about what I see. Just and it's really easy to do when you're really super interested in it because everything you look at, you're just like, oh wow, that's how does that malware work? That's awesome. Like that's crazy. I've never seen that before. Or oh man, so they used this to get that information? No way, I never would have thought, you know. So yeah, it's like a playground for somebody who's
Yeah.
really into not just security but data, somebody who's really interested in data. So
Uh,
from there I got an IT support job, a pretty in-depth IT support job, and then the Linux support admin thing, and then I finally got my first security role, which is the same one that I'm in right now.
so how long has been since you got into your current role? This is your first role in information security.
Yep, definitely is. It's been about 7 years since I
7 years.
was
Wow.
first working in IT. Yeah. Yep. I actually started out my very first sort of IT related job was working in a computer store. Um, did that for about 3 months or so, and until they didn't have enough hours to keep everybody on staff. But that was actually something I wanted to do since I was a little kid, so that was pretty cool. I was excited about that. That was just before I finished my degree, and once I finished it, that's when I went over to the NOC. But yep, about 7 years. And the reason I focused towards networking is because when I first started looking around online, I was Googling constantly, like, how do you get into security jobs?
Okay.
How do people get their start, right? And there's no one answer, there's no one path, as a lot of people will tell you. But what I've discovered is there is definitely there are definitely several paths that will get you there. They're not necessarily required, but if you follow it, you'll almost certainly end up in security. And one of those is that the way someone explained it on a forum to me once was nobody wants to hire a security person who doesn't know networking, who can't manage the network, doesn't
One
understand
without the
networking.
other, right?
Right. Yep. And it's such an essential skill to know networking if you're going to be in security. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a CCNA. What you don't have to be a CCNP or anything, especially or JNCIA, whatever the different vendor certs. You don't have to be amazing. You just have to be competent. So if you use this, since I know the Cisco cert program, I know the basic Cisco cert is the CCENT. If you have a CCENT, you've got enough. You're fine. You know how packets work. You know how the internet works. You know what you're looking at with host addresses or host IPs and destination IPs and source and destination, all that stuff. You know how to do subnetting. Like you're fine. Um, if you have a CompTIA Network Plus, or if you have that level of knowledge, I will say if you have certain certs different times, but I always mean if you have that level of knowledge. If you're at that point, then you're also fine. Like just basic networking background, and it is consistently surprising to me the security people that every now and then I come across who don't have that level of basic networking foundation, which it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but because of course you got to start somewhere. As long as you're working towards getting that, you're fine. But and as long as you have somebody there to like mentor you to help you figure out the networking stuff as needed, then great. But I would say the only worst case scenario is if you don't know anything about networking and you find that you're somehow the only security person at a place, like not super great. Um,
Not ideal.
now it can be great for you because you're going to learn a lot of stuff if you apply yourself. Like it's going to be amazing. But for the people that hired you, maybe that's not so great until you get on your feet. But you know, but yeah, it's just networking is such a great area to come from to security. I would say that's my ideal focus to have somebody from networking move over into security but I've also seen really amazing people come from IT to writing their own programs to help make their job easier, to pull data and stuff like that, and then go right into security engineering. And excuse me, and they would learn the uh, the stuff that is specific to security for writing programs. Like they would learn what kinds of principles they want to write programs for to deal with, and then they would work kind of backwards from developing security tools
Yeah.
to learning security principles, and then probably they get into application security, which we just need so badly everywhere. And yeah, it's there's so many paths. It's hard to predict how you might end up there. But like I said, my advice is pretty much if you choose one of these specific set paths because you know you want to get into security, then it's going to get you there
Yeah, I think the
eventually.
key here is passion. Passion,
Yeah,
because like you said, you need
absolutely.
to get up to speed and you need to constantly be training yourself, because
Hmm.
the world out there in the internet is mean. I mean, there's always
Oh
someone
yeah.
that is trying to hack you or
Yep.
penetrate into your network or something, and you
Yep.
need to keep up. And yeah, like a doctor, there are always new diseases, right? Here we are.
Never
With
stops.
Yeah, exactly. And talking a little bit about that, how different is your job from a professional penetration tester? Is it
So
somehow mixed?
mhm. Yeah, there are definitely tie-ins. What I would say is that uh, they're first off for anybody who's viewing that isn't aware of how kind of the two sides of the house go. In security, there's a blue team and there's red team jobs. And
Okay.
your blue team are defenders, and your red team are your attackers, the good guy attackers now, hackers that basically work to hack you before the bad guys hack you, so they can say fix this, that, and that, so that they will have a way harder time. So um, and then next time I'll be back in a few months to see if I can get passed again. And then I can tell you that stuff. So when we'll just keep doing that, looping back over and
Like
over
iterations
until we
and
get to the point.
iterations and iterations.
Yep, exactly. Until we get to the point where I'm like, man, I can't freaking find a way in. I'm gonna have to do some research and write some special tools. And like at that point, when you get to that level of maturity for your security program, then you're already so far above almost all other organizations that you're just basically coming up with ways to make your jobs easier, to make your life easier, and to find the fine details, the smallest little things that an extremely competent attacker would be able to sneak past you, because those are the only people that are getting past you at that point. And that's really where you want to be, but it's not absolutely essential to get there. And most organizations will not ever get there. And that's just the fact of the matter, because it's dependent on budget and it's dependent on personnel and time. So just, lack of resources. But the good news about that is that as a on the blue team side of things, as a defender, of course, you're watching out for all the stuff those red team guys are doing, right? Red team guys, girls, people are doing. And you're basically, your goal is to learn about how they do what they do, what it looks like when you see it, and why they're doing some of the things they're doing. So if I see someone send a phishing email and a user clicks on it and goes to a site, and they're presented with a form, maybe it's credential phishing or something. I want to understand what it is that attacker's goal is at that point, of course, to gather the information to be able to compromise that account that the user might give them. And then it's important for me as a defender to know, if they successfully get that information, what are they going to be able to do with it? How big is the blast radius, if you will, of that damage that's about to take place? And then you might know that, from knowing that, you might know, yeah, they're going to have access to all of this stuff. They're going to be able to send emails to other users in the organization and convince them that this is safe stuff, so that they can go and do the same thing and fill out that form and get more credentials, and keep doing that over and over again until they eventually get credentials that have really high privileges. And then they just pivot from there everywhere, and everything is it's all over. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that you want to do. You want to be able to think like an attacker. The
Yeah.
more you can do that, the better you're going to be as a defender. And that's pretty much why I've often looked to see what kinds of what they call TTPs, tactics, tools, and the tactics, tools, and procedures. Yeah, that's it. Tactics,
Okay.
tools, and procedures the attackers are using, um, basically, so that I can see, like, number one, because it's interesting to learn about, but more than that, because if I see something happening on a network, of course, I can always Google it and eventually figure it out. But it's even better if I can say, oh, I bet that's this thing, and I need to go
Understand.
here and look for that right now. So, yeah, it's just it's continuously working backwards. It's a cat and mouse game. The blue team is trying to figure out what the bad guy attackers and the red team folks are trying to do so they can protect against it, and they're trying to figure out how the blue team is detecting what it is that they're doing so they can attack it and remain undetected where possible. So, um, must be bedtime.
Yeah.
So, yeah, basically that's what it's all about. Each side wants to know how to defeat the other side, just like any other game. So basically, I would say it's just really personal preference what you want to do. If you want to do pen testing, you can. At one point, I thought I wanted to do penetration testing, and then I realized that that wasn't really what I wanted to do, because
Okay.
a lot of times the reality of that is, congratulations, you're a pen tester. Here are a bunch of scripts for you to run. Run these scripts on these clients, and then at the end of the day, turn in this report. Have fun. And what I thought it was going to be more of a thing where, hey, here's a company, here's a client that's hired us, figure out how to break in, get past their defenses, go, right? And that would have been, of course, way more fun. Something like doing a hack the box HTB, was it hackthebox.eu, I think it is. If you Google that, for folks who don't know about it, it's basically machines on virtual machines on the internet that you can practice attacking legally
Oh,
and safely.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
so yep. So I was thinking, like, at first, oh, that's going to be awesome. I can sit here and use my skills to break into different systems and then let them know how I do it. And that'll be lots of fun, right? And then I found out more of the reality of it. And that's just not really how it usually
Uh-huh.
works.
That's like
That's pretty
the
much.
sorry to interrupt you, but
Mhm.
that's like the
Oh, yeah.
the game testers. Like when I was a
Yep.
kid, hey, I want to be a game tester, but then I realized that a
Yep.
game tester is just running into the same wall 100 times to
Right.
find a bug.
Yep.
So you end
Yep.
up hating the games instead of loving them.
Oh, yeah. A. Okay,
Exactly.
976 times pressing
There's where the
A.
bug is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But so yeah, it's that's just, yeah, that's not really so much what I'm interested in. Now there are definitely places, and I would say probably mostly government organizations where you would do this, but there are places that you do definitely do get to do that. But for the most part, you're not starting out there. You're
Yeah.
working up from lower levels, and probably honestly coming from blue team side of things. Usually, most folks are not going directly into red team. One of the exceptions of that is you start getting into probably, I would say, the best path to red teaming that I've seen is you get into doing competitions, hacking competitions.
Oh,
And a
hackathons.
lot of times employers are watching at those things, especially the bigger ones. You go into bigger and bigger ones, and the better and better you do, you start getting job offers to go and be professional hackers. So, and like I said, a lot of times those are government positions or government contracting company positions.
Yeah.
So it's out there. It's just that's not where most of the jobs are. And it makes sense too, because if you're running a company that is going to provide people security tests, I could say, all right, I have I have 5 people that can do this, and we have 25 clients. So I could let those 5 people work for a week, compromising these 25 clients, because that's all we can handle. Or I could say, all right, I'm going to go out and pull in 100 clients. And instead of having them individually do that, I'm just going to let these guys have all these automated tools to basically hit a button and have it run through and do everything for them, so that those 5 people can hack like 100 companies instead of 25. And you'll pull in much more money, much faster. So it just
Yeah.
makes business sense to do it that way. So yeah, a little bit, was a little bit disappointed about that, but that's actually okay, because like I said, I think the probably best way to go is to have a good foundation as a defender, as a blue team role first, and then you can always work your way over to that side of the house. That's always
Yeah.
going to be there. um, Another part of that that they have is it's not really red team, it's a blue team thing, but it's sort of close, it's overlaps, and that's evaluating policies. Again, mostly for government and government related businesses, but also for certain businesses sometimes. You evaluate policies for how well they match compliance controls, for how likely it is for a place to get compromised because they're not following certain best practices with their policies, that sort of stuff. So let's say, excuse me, let's say that I'm a policy and compliance security person, and I go into a company and see that everybody is allowed to use their own home computers, their own laptops at the office. Okay, cool. BYOB, BYOD, bring your own device program. That's great. What kind of controls do you have to make sure that those machines aren't allowing bad stuff onto your corporate network? Do you have any? Are you using mobile device management to give you an idea of what's going on with these things
Yep.
and let you shut them down or quarantine them if necessary? That sort of thing. I might say, all right, you're not. Well, let's. I'm going to recommend that you have a policy to put that in place. That you must do that if you're going to use your own machine, or you're not going to be allowed onto the network, something like that. Or I might say we need to have a policy for the networking team to know that you cannot have the guest wireless network attached in any way to the corporate network because you're just asking for trouble. So we're going to put that in
Yep.
the policy. So that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity in policy, and people might, on one hand, think that that can be boring, policy and compliance, and I'm sure it can. And reports are probably not fun to write up, but I think to me, it really depends on how you think about it, because you're still a defender. You're still stopping bad stuff before it happens. You're not necessarily looking at bits on the wire and packets flying through and bad guys doing bad stuff all the time, but you're sitting here thinking like an attacker, and that can be fun on its own. Just doing exercises like, I bet I could get into that by doing this. What is there to stop it? Oh, this office does a great job of securing their laptops, their endpoints, but that office over there doesn't seem to do anything. So I wonder if I could get in here and then move my way over to there because they trust those guys because they're in the same office, they're same
Yeah.
building. So yeah, that sort of stuff. So there's really a lot of opportunity in security besides what people already know. Your traditional blue team and red team roles. Your blue team role, generally entry level, is going to look like working at a SOC, which is basically what I was doing until a few months ago. You essentially watch the monitors, you watch the screens with the SIM output that I was talking about earlier,
Yeah.
and respond to those events, respond to those alerts and emergencies and such, and then of course answer customer questions and tell them what they need to do and that sort of stuff. If it's that's for if you're like I am working at a managed service provider, we have multiple customers, multiple environments that we
Oh,
have to
okay.
watch. But if you're just working at a single company, then same type thing, except your scope is much smaller. You just instead of telling the customer's IT department at whichever customer, you might go walk over to networking and let them know what's going on. You might go walk over to the development team and let them know what you're seeing, that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's all the same type of thing though, just either in house or not. And it's it's a really good path, I would say. Getting SOC analyst experience is a really good path towards anything else in security. You're gonna see incident response eventually. You're gonna see forensics. You're gonna see uh, red team stuff because
Yeah.
you're gonna have times where somebody hires an outside agency of red teamers to audit
Yeah.
your network, your devices, your whatever it
Verify
is they're
if you
hiring.
comply like with HIPAA, right? Or
Mhm.
PCI
Yep.
or
Yeah, you're gonna get auditors. Yeah.
exactly. Hey,
Yep.
so have you ever had to deal with a serious threat as a security engineer?
Yep. Sure have. Um, I've had situations where there were machines. I would say probably the most common one is someone has been tricked into providing credentials,
Okay.
and now we have a rogue user on the network. Somebody has now logged in from halfway across the world, and they're happily just downloading stuff and uploading malware and sending phishing emails to the rest of the company and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, I've seen that a few times, not very often. Most of the time, it's tends to be pretty regular stuff. You'll look at an alert and say, "Oh my gosh, that looks really dangerous! Wow, we've got to let everybody know and stop that activity." And next thing you know, by the time you keep looking and ring all the bells and whistles and call everybody, like, "Oh yeah, I was just testing something out. Sorry about that." And some developer somewhere has said, "I wonder what would happen if I just did this." So
And they
yeah,
do it.
I would say mostly that's what it turns out to be. It's usually not the cool stuff you see on the movies. It's usually just somebody fished account credentials and now you've got to stop them. Got to lock it down and change the passwords.
That's it.
Because yeah, because that is the easiest way to compromise companies. It really is. It used to be that you're looking for entries past a network perimeter. You're looking to get past the firewall somehow. You're looking to get some kind of direct access to a company network. And these days, I would say a lot of times those things are pretty reasonably secured just by having security solutions that you pull out of the box and turn on, right? But now, rather than spending all that time and effort, attackers realize that they can just say, if I get the passwords and the credentials for passwords and usernames for legitimate users, especially highly privileged users, then I don't have to worry about hacking anything. I can just walk right in the front door.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yep. And then, of course, same thing for social engineers, which another thing there is in
Okay.
security that's actually pretty awesome.
Yeah, so social engineering is a big topic, and I think the best
Yep.
countermeasure to social engineering is just user awareness, right? A couple of trainings here
Definitely.
and there, and yeah, just create awareness within your team and the
Yep.
company that hey, be careful. Once again, the internet is a bad place. I mean, there are bad people out there that they are trying to scam you to steal your credentials. That's pretty much and all the things that they need to go into your network, like you said.
Yep.
And now this is
Yeah, man.
the famous question: what certification should I get? We already talked a little bit
Yep.
about CCNA, CompTIA Plus,
Mhm.
but specifically for information security, is there anything
Uh-huh.
out there?
Yep, there definitely is. And I've got a really lazy answer for that. And which honestly I do for a lot of these other things too. Because Leslie Carhart on Twitter, she's at Hacks for Pancakes, hacks number 4 pancakes. And her site, it's tisiphone.net, Tiphone, I believe. If I can spell, let's see. I don't have autocomplete on the video. Yep, Tiphone.net. And she has some amazing stuff on her site. You can spend a year on her site and still not be finished. Just so much content. And she's just donated so much knowledge and interaction to the community. It's amazing. But she has a basically a frequently asked questions guide on how to get into InfoSec. She has a section called InfoSec Careers in Education here, and she gives you, I think it's like a good 2 or 3 different uh, volumes on what kinds of topics you need to know about, what kinds of things there are to be aware of, what you should do at which parts of your career, advice on certain topics from people who are experienced security engineers, security analysts, folks in the business. How important is it to have a degree? What kind of degree do you want? Pretty much everything you can think of is right there. So I would say if I wish I knew about her site when I first got started, because I might have gotten here in 4 years instead of 7. So,
Uh,
um, yep, definitely would say check her out. And just in general, adding all the security people you can on Twitter, you'll find out the things that people talk about. You'll find out like the cutting edge events that are just, hey, such and such thing happened. It's all over security Twitter. It's all over InfoSec Twitter.
and
And
and now that you mentioned that, like we
mhm,
already mentioned, right, that a security engineer needs to be up to date with all the trends and everything that's happening. So in this
yep,
case, the community will be a great tool to keep up to date.
absolutely. Yep, definitely. I would say that's the starting point for staying involved, for staying up to date on stuff. You don't have to know everything that goes on the internet, but the big stuff you should know about.
Yeah.
Because if there is anything big in the past 6 months or a year or something, when you go into an interview, if you have people that know what they're doing for a security position, they're going to ask you about at least one of those big events because they want to know if you're paying attention and
Okay.
how involved you are, how interested in security you really are. Maybe some places won't because they don't really care that much. As long as you have the basic skills, you can fill a seat, they're good. But I would say for the most part, you're not going to find too much of that. Most of the time, they want to know you really care about this. What are you doing? This shows that you have. Are you experimenting stuff at home, using VMs to make lab and try out things? Are you working with Metasploit? Are you looking through Wireshark packets? Like, what kind of stuff are you doing to pursue that interest? And um, if you have if you really have an interest and you are often looking at those things, it's going to be obvious and it can do nothing but help you in interviews. And of course, that same guide in Leslie's site will say all those same things. So, and probably much better than I am because she's way better at this and way more experienced. So, yep. Yeah, just in a nutshell, certification wise, basic level certs, and then from there, the sky's the limit. CompTIA Security Plus, CCENT, Network Plus, and then some extra security knowledge. There's a book that I've read probably about 75% of that somebody who was a security engineer at one of the biggest corporations in the world that I used to work for. He advised me to get this book, and I did. It's Ross Anderson's Security Engineering, and
Okay.
I think probably all security people that you talk to who are serious will know about that book, and have either seen it or read some of it or heard somebody who has or something.
Okay.
Really well known. You go through that, and that'll give you a very good introduction into probably every area, just about every area of security you could ask for. Certain things like the cryptography chapter can be pretty hard to follow, but for the most part, it's not too bad. Anybody can pick it up and read it. But that's the kind of stuff that's more of your intermediate level security knowledge. Once you're already past that security plus cert level type of thinking. And then the fact that there's so many these days, there's so much information online to get to that point without
Yeah.
even touching the cert study curriculum. If you are careful about what you're looking for, if you specifically know what you're looking for, like let's say you go to look at job postings, that's a great place to go. Look up job postings and look at the kinds of skills that they're asking for. And keep in mind that some of these things are ridiculous and you're not going to find anybody to fill those. They're looking for unicorns, but
Yeah.
a lot of those things in there are just basic foundational things. And you can say, all right, so all these postings I look at, they always say, you need to be familiar with a SIM. You need to be familiar with Bro or Suricata for analyzing packets or something like that. So then I'll say, okay, awesome. Let me go out and look for free study materials on that and figure out what I can learn and start getting used to it. It's surprising how helpful it is to just take 10 minutes about a topic in security that you hear and you're like, oh, I don't know what that is. Let me go read a little bit about it
Yeah.
and just read as quick as you can through what you see from Google. And okay, cool. Now I'm more or less up to speed on what that is. If somebody asks me about it, I can tell them. I mean, I can tell them, I'm no expert at it, but I've seen it before and I can tell you a little bit about what it is.
And at least you
I
will have
know,
an idea.
right? Yeah, because at that point you can say this fits in here with these other different security principles
And
or
you fill in the
products.
blanks.
Yep, definitely.
What about
So,
sorry, have you ever heard about the
mhm.
Certified Information System Security Professional, the
uh,
CISSP from the
yeah,
System Certification Consortium?
yep.
But that's like
So
higher tier, right?
yeah, definitely. And I'll say this, same as you don't need a, CCNA routing and switching or higher to get into networking, you can do it with a CCENT very easily or a Network Plus without a problem, as long as you have a good IT background. Similar thing, you definitely don't need to go to the top cert for that. But if you do, you're going to have an easier time of getting there.
Okay.
And basically, the CISSP, it's geared towards knowledge that is great for a security manager to have.
Oh,
And obviously,
okay.
you're not going to start out as a security manager, but if you have that level of knowledge, you already have a huge amount of foundational principle knowledge, and you can go very in depth with that knowledge that you have, as long as you didn't do something highly unadvisable, like go out and find brain dumps to learn the answers to take a particular cert. Because when you're doing that, what I like to say is you're shooting yourself in the foot. Because eventually, if you ever actually need that knowledge, it's not going to be there. There are also ways that these different tests have developed, and they'll probably get even better to detect when people are doing that. They have, for example, um, garbage questions or questions that were on past tests that they know were leaked out to the public one way or another for brain dumps. So they put that question on there that's not going to be scored, but only to see if that's something that you get the answer to, even though all these other people who did it the right way and studied don't get that question because they're not supposed to. So
Yeah.
they have little things to trip people up, little tripwires. But the main thing, like I said, is you don't want to do that because you don't have the knowledge. You won't be really,
It's
you
like
won't be
cheating
what,
yourself.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll be what a friend of mine used to call a paper cert. So yep. But yeah, that's the CISSP. My overall takeaway on it is once you have, good IT knowledge foundation, once you have a good security knowledge foundation, then you have enough to start going out and learning about security stuff. If you get your CISSP at that point, um, then you have a really good chance of getting a security job somewhere. You also possibly have a good chance of getting a security job that's higher level than what you should get at that
Okay.
point, without being somebody who has foundation experience, because there are places where, to be honest, they just don't really know much about security, and they don't have don't have a mature security program at all. So they might just go out and say, all right, this is a really well regarded certification, so we hire the first person we see that has that, and as cheaply as possible, and we should be okay to go. And that's not true at all. But they places just don't realize that, they don't know any better.
Hmm.
So I would say basically that's a good cert to get if you know what path you're trying to take. If you have a plan and you're already qualified to get into an entry level security job, that will at least tell people that you have foundational knowledge and that you know a lot about security topics and you're ready to start learning all this stuff. They will say, why did you get such an expensive cert to start out with? That really wasn't necessary, but I have no doubt in my mind that that person knows the most important concepts in security. They're not going to be lost. Besides that, people will also say, a lot of people will consider that very suspect, because if you have no security experience and you have a CISSP, they're
How
going to say,
come?
"How did you get that?"
Yeah.
Because yeah, you should have been in the field for a minimum number of years to be able to qualify to take it. But what a lot of people don't realize, what I didn't used to realize until my previous manager told me, was that if you know someone, you work with someone who's a CISSP, they can sponsor you to take the CISSP test before you have that requisite number of years experience. So I think it's I forget, a junior CISSP designation or something like that, or exploratory. I forget what it's called, but it's the same test, it's the same certification. It's just like basically a little asterisk to say he doesn't have this many years experience, but
Oh,
still
okay.
knows all this stuff. Still
So,
a pretty cool guy.
yeah.
So
So, long story short for that one
yeah.
is that you recommend someone getting that CISP when they are on the track already, not as an entry
Yeah.
level.
Yep. Yep. It can help you get to a higher role in the next leg of your security career. Or it could just be you're going for government jobs and they love I don't know about different other world governments, but I know definitely in the US they love to see those tier levels of certs. They'll say sometimes you have to have a level 3 tier cert, which might be CISSP, uh, CCNP, stuff like that, the upper level cert tier, to be able to qualify for a certain job. And it's a hard and fast requirement. You won't get this job if you don't have it.
Oh.
Whereas most civilian company jobs, they like to say, yeah, you've got to have this, you've got to have that. But if they get somebody that seems pretty good and they don't have those things, they're just like, well, we knew we wouldn't get anybody that had that, but we were going to try anyway.
Yeah.
So always got to apply for stuff, even if you don't think you're qualified. You will be shocked sometimes what you
Yeah,
can get.
you just need to give it a try. And well, my last question is
Mhm.
like, what are the levels on the corporate ladder? Like, I think the top is CISO, right? Chief Information
Yep.
Security Officer. But what are
Mhm.
in the middle, or because you start like let's say junior net security
Like security
engineer, right?
analyst.
Or
Yeah,
analyst.
security engineer, security analyst. Yep.
So
Either way.
what are in the middle?
So I would say basically the way it goes is oh, and I believe it's on Leslie's site there that she actually has a chart. I know I've seen it in a few places, but I'm pretty sure she has it there somewhere,
Okay.
probably in her careers guide. The InfoSec Careers Mega Mix is called on there. I'm pretty sure she has a chart that shows you at different levels of career what certs are appropriate for you. So that can be extremely helpful to see. Um, but yeah, besides that, the different levels, there's your junior, your entry level SOC analyst, junior security engineer. But a lot of times outside of a SOC, you don't find entry level security positions. They're extremely rare outside of a setting like a SOC. So and the reason for that is because most companies don't have the resources to have junior security people. They might only have budget for one well-paid security person or like two or three sort of decently paid security people. And they, when that's the case, they want to have the most senior, most experienced people they can, and at the very least, somebody who's great and at an intermediate level. And to be able to have entry level security people in a good situation, you want to have seniors that are much more competent, much more experienced, able to guide and mentor those people. And the understanding that they're not going to, week one, month one, even 6 months from the start, going to be able to go out there and do all the different stuff that your organization needs them to do to be able to secure your environment. So they're going to need a little bit of work. They can be awesome after a while. They can even start out being pretty great, then still have a way to go. But you still got to have that experienced senior level person, and that costs more money, more resources. So yeah, most of the time at a single company that's not a security company itself, you're going to find intermediate and senior level security roles. So that would look like just simply security engineer for the title, information security specialist, something like that, security analyst. Um, Basically, at a SOC, a security analyst might be a true entry level role. There might be three different tiers: SOC analyst one, SOC analyst two, SOC analyst three, or it might just all be one. But at a non-security related company, it's just going to be a security analyst, and that person has like 7+ years experience and a few certs or a degree under their belt or something. So then from there, from that intermediate level, usually there are specialized security roles, and you only really find those at fairly large companies or companies that they themselves focus on security as their main product. So um, if you go work at like CrowdStrike or something, or if you go work at like Palo Alto Systems, you'll find like incident response specialists. You'll find forensic specialists. You'll find uh, vulnerability management specialists,
Okay.
stuff like that. Those specific niches within security, and those are at your intermediate level too. It's just that at a company where you're the security girl, woman, you're like the security um, dude, like whatever happens, it's on your shoulders. At those places, there might be one, there might be two, but like I said, there's not really any entry level, and a lot of times there's no senior level either. There's just that one role, and once they get to the point where they're ready to go beyond that, the way you advance is to go somewhere else. Um, and or the other way is to go over to a different level in a different branch entirely. Like you might go to become a director of IT from working in security as the security person. I've seen that happen before. You might go to become maybe a VP of technology or something like that.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, something that's not really within the same area of what you were previously staying within, but is still a next higher level. So some people are cool with that, and it works for them. That's great. But I would say a lot of the times, most security people are looking to advance within their specific area. So you'll want to choose a specialty and start focusing towards something. And like for me, that's incident response because while I might not get to go on a red team role and just have fun hacking at stuff all day. You can instead go in when somebody has had fun hacking some stuff that they shouldn't have been and figure out what they've done, figure out the best way to stop them, assess the damage, and prevent it from happening again, close up the
Okay.
gaps. And I think reconstructing those incidents or even seeing them live as they're happening can be probably just as exciting, if not more. So that's definitely something that's out there. The forensic, that's the incident responder. They a lot of times lump this into one field called DFIR, which is defense forensics and incident response, digital forensics and incident response even. And the forensic side tends to be more like working for a police department, working for a federal law enforcement agency of some kind, maybe, and figuring out doing the computer forensics for cases that are technology crime involved.
Yeah.
And I'm
Like
sure that can be
CSI and
really
all that.
cool. Yeah, exactly. They always need qualified people. A lot of times they don't have the budget to get them, and there's a whole lot of potential for really getting a great start and a lot of really interesting work. I'm sure. Also, there's a lot of really difficult work, and not difficult technically, but from what I've heard, difficult as far as the kinds of things that you're going to have to see are going to be
Okay.
difficult to deal with as a human being, and people tend to burn out on those kinds of things with law enforcement a lot. But unfortunately, we continue to really need them very badly, especially since that does happen.
Yeah.
So that's always going to be there. Um, so yeah, once you've pretty much finished your entry level experience time, go specialize in something else. To do that, you're going to be working at a security company for the most part, or just a huge corporation. And like for myself, I work at a security company, and there are a lot of great advantages to that because at a lot of regular companies, other general purpose companies in different industries, even if they have an IT department and they have a security department of a few people, they don't really consider security their top priority.
Okay.
And because of that, it can be tough to get budget for the training and materials and certs and going to conferences and stuff like that that you want to keep yourself and your people sharp within the security department. It can also be difficult to say, to convincingly say, hey, we need you to buy this equipment or this product so that we can get control of a certain situation before it gets bad, so that we can make sure that we're covered for this type of scenario. And they might say, well, that might be like ideal, but I'm not so sure that we've actually needed it. We've been running for 10, 15 years without it, and we've been just fine. So I'm going to say probably not. I'd rather spend that money on our ad revenue budget or something like that, marketing or
Yeah.
whatever else might be, product development, something. So yeah, so at a security company, you can get those things. You don't have to help someone understand why it's worth their while to spend money on helping train you to become a better security technician, um, better practitioner. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of advantages to working somewhere like that. Working at a large corporation, probably some of the same things you get there, just because they have huge budgets in general already. So if as long as you have good leadership on the security team, then it's probably not too tough to make those things happen. And you can get people to pay for things like advanced level training. And if you want to go and take SANS courses, which of course are some of the best security courses you can find, and get certifications from there, which will pretty much make your career, then yeah, you need somebody to pay for those 7, 8, $9,000 courses. So most of the time, most of us do. I'm sure some people don't, but that's not me. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully that kind of answers your question. Oh, sorry, I forgot the upper tier stuff. There's just it's so much involved in these different areas that it's really easy to go off into a rabbit hole, man. But the senior level roles in security tend to be things like if you're in a SOC, it's a SOC manager and then the SOC director. or even senior analyst, then SOC manager, then SOC director. If you're not in a SOC, if you're at a regular security company, then you're either the security director or the security team manager who reports to the IT director. That's your senior role at a mid-sized company, most likely, where they have more than one security person. When you are security for a smaller to mid-sized company and it's just you, then you're normally not considered a manager. They usually consider you like a security analyst, security specialist, security expert, whatever the title is called, but you'll roll up under the IT department's leadership, under the director of IT.
Yeah.
Um, if you go to a larger company and looking for upper roles there, depending on how many different security teams you have, you might have a director for each of those teams. So that's what that upper level looks like there. And after that, there's only like VP of technology, VP of information security, CISO, that sort of thing. Um, but I would say that basically by the time you get to be a CISO, um, you should you should already have basic security stuff under your belt and intermediate security stuff. You don't have to have gone through all of the different ranks, but all the different levels. But you should definitely be a competent security practitioner who's done it in the past, and now you've become a competent manager of people
Yeah.
who also understands the technology and the things they have to deal with. And you can get out there and fight for funding, fight for priorities, and use what you know and what you can learn to put together a good security program and start thinking about the make sure the organization is headed towards a good level of security maturity. So, yep, there's a pretty much any area of IT is going to have some relevance, and you just look at what there is out there and figure out what sounds like a good, like a fun thing to do. That's my advice.
Yeah, to never get bored. And I
Hmm.
think it depends on the people, I guess, but if you do something that you really like, you will never get bored. And
Yeah.
also, since there are a lot of things new all the time, you will never stop learning, which is
Yep.
something that is very important. Like myself, I want to learn a lot of things every single day. That's why we are here with you.
Yep. Yep.
So, well, Craig,
Totally.
thank you very much. That was a great conversation. Wow, it's like almost 1 hour now. It
Yeah.
went
Yeah. I
like
see. It went way longer than I thought. Yep. But
for me,
I love talking about this stuff. I could do it all day.
yeah, and for me, thank you very much because I
Mhm.
enjoyed this. I learned a lot. The blue team, red team, the intermediate levels, and that web page to go and take a look with the curses
Mhm.
and the charts and all that.
Yep.
So thank you very much. And
Sure.
well, for the folks there, I think some of my friends are watching there, but they don't have questions. So stay tuned for another interview sometime, and see you
Yep.
later. Bye bye.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Had a good time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you inviting me.
No
Take
worries.
care.
Bye. Take care.